syndrome with that. That really does. I really do.
For real. And I normally would be like crazy nervous, but I have watched you so much. I just feel like you're my friend. You know, it's one of those Hollywood things where you like know them and then they're like, who are you?
I did a podcast on that. You and I have a parasocial relationship. That's what we have. Did you know that?
I like that.
I like that.
I'm so comfortable. We're already like, you're my friend.
That's right. Yeah. But you've been very patient with me as far as getting me on the show. So I feel like you are my friend as well.
Oh, well.
Erica is kind of left out, right? Yeah.
We're pretty flexible though. We don't really have like time limits for anything. So
no, we're just thrilled to have you.
No, I'm excited. So how many, and we're recording. Okay, good.
I'm just going to record because you never know what you need.
Record it all. And then do you guys put things up on YouTube or do you want me to do that? Or
Go
what?
for it.
I'm on it.
I've never, but you're welcome to.
Okay, I will. That will be kind of fun and exciting. People can actually see what we look like, which that's why I have Hollywood lights.
You're so fancy.
Yeah, exactly. So what I did, one of the first times I interviewed Jody Moore, and I looked like I was a little troll in a cave, and then she was lustrous, like, and so afterward I was like, all right, help me out. And she just said, Amazon, like $100, get some lights.
Light, dude.
Yeah. So I did. But then I don't know how to use them. So now I have a shadow on my head, I think.
No, you nailed it. You look great.
Very kind. All right. So, I will let you drive. I have a tendency to talk a little bit. I don't know if you've noticed.
Great. Well,
so do
that's
I.
why we like you.
All right. It's a battle. Who will talk the most?
I will try to cover my mouth. No.
Okay, I'm going to get it started.
Okay.
We want to welcome everyone to this episode of Becoming today. We have a special treat for you. Actually, I hate it when people say that. I hate it when people say that because then I think I'm going to get like a chocolate chip cookie or something.
Yeah, I would say it. I am definitely not a special treat. I mean, I think that's a little bit of a stretch.
Okay, we have the real deal for you today. Tony Overbay is with us, and he is a licensed marriage and family specialist. He also is the host of a phenomenal podcast called The Virtual Couch. And we are so thrilled to have you, Tony. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for inviting me on. And I am nervous because I know that I want to talk to teens, but then parents listen as well. And I love that we've been talking behind the scenes, and I really want to get a message to teenagers, but their parents are going to hear, and we don't want them to hear, or maybe we do want them to hear. Secretly, we want them to hear, right?
Right.
Okay. What is your breakdown? Like, do you know the percentage of teenagers versus parents that are sneak listening? Do you have a feel for that?
I'd love to know that. Teens sometimes sneakily, like, they're there, but they don't necessarily like tell us that they're there. But I know we have a ton of teens who listen, but then we also have lots of parents who listen on their own, whether they have teens or not. So we have quite a few, but our message is always to teens, and then typically the message really resonates with everybody.
Yeah, we get.
I love it. And now I feel like I want to.
Go ahead.
That's what I was going to ask. So do you get messages from parents that are saying, thanks for the info? Okay.
We get
teenagers.
We get some from teenagers, and it's funny, they don't engage as much online with us, but they do enjoy messaging. So we know they're listening, or if I run into a teen, like I've had two that just recognized me, and I was like, oh, it was quite exciting. But they said, please don't stop doing it. It's been really helpful in my life. So just even that one girl, it's been worth it to just do it for that one person that needs it. So yeah, I've had
a couple of the teenagers. I have a couple of teenagers that I see in therapy that I have recommended that listen to your podcast. So that's been kind of nice too. So they when they're sitting across the couch from me, they don't care about who I am at all. But then when they heard that I'm going to be on your podcast, now all of a sudden, I got a little bit of cred.
Street cred.
That's nice. Right?
Well, that's flattering. Thank you.
So if you want to, I want you to kind of set the scene for what it is we're talking about, since we're talking to teens, kind of, hey, like, parents, you get to zip it for a minute, and we're going to kind of open the can of, hey, like, this is where your parents are coming from, maybe to help them kind of understand. So will you kind of set the scene for what we're talking about today and why we're talking to teens?
Yeah. So, this is why I was so excited when you guys reached out. I've always wanted to do a podcast where I did one a little while ago where I said, It's for men only. So, hey, women don't listen. But of course, I wanted the women to listen. And then I got to be all tough with the guys and come on, man up or all those kind of things. But I've always wanted to do one for teenagers because I get to see teenagers in sessions a lot. And parents hand a teenager off to a therapist and say, fix teenager. And, and I immediately, and usually a teenager comes in and they don't want to talk, and that's fair. And I always, I always say, hey, I can't make you talk. And I also don't have a magic wand or a magic bean or something that then will all of a sudden make everything better. And so we've got this hour. So just tell me more about you. And then it's and we're off and running. Because at the core, I feel like when parents say fix teenager, and so can I tell a real quick backstory?
Yeah, of course.
So when I was getting my master's in counseling, I was a little bit late to sign up for a practicum site. You have to do a practicum, which is kind of like free therapy at the end of your master's program. And so I ended up, I really felt called to work with men, and now I work with a lot of couples and things like that. But I was late to sign up for a practicum site and ended up working for a nonprofit that worked with mandated kids and parents that through the courts that had to go to therapy. And so I ended up working with a lot of the kids, and it was fine, playing Jenga. I got really good at Jenga and I could play other games. But then the more I would talk to the kid, I realized, man, I just want to go strangle the parent. And I felt like I was just teaching the kid coping skills of how to work with a parent who really didn't care a lot.
Yeah.
And I know that was a pretty rough population that I was working with, but then that concept kind of rang through to then when I started meeting with teenagers. And teenagers want to be heard. I mean, they really do want to be heard. And so then I felt like the more I could listen to a teenager, I was finding those same things. It's like, man, get your parents in here. Like, I need to talk to your parents right now, And so then I thought, okay, that'll work. But then you get the parents in, and the parents a lot of times go into the, well, if you really saw how they were at home, or, well, I've tried that and that doesn't work, and that sort of thing. And so then I started thinking, okay, sometimes parents come in and they say, help me be a better parent. And I love that, bless their hearts. But then often I'm getting the teenager, and the parent is saying, fix the teenager. And then teenager says, all right, what am I going to do? And so I really feel like over time, I started, I would validate, I would listen to a teenager. I totally would feel like I'm understanding their experience. But then it's like, then they go back home and they have parents who are still telling them, here's what you're supposed to do. And, meanwhile, telling stories about what it was like to have CDs and cassette players and like 3 channels on the TV. And like, that's going to inspire the teenager, and the teenager's going to go, oh my gosh, Dad, that sounds so cool. I think I'll do everything that you say, which has any teenager ever said that?
That doesn't
Never,
work.
Right? Yeah, surprisingly it doesn't. And yet then even as a parent, I'm like, well, maybe they'll really like to hear additional stories of my high school experience and what it was like to not have a cell phone or social media accounts. Maybe then they'll really feel inspired to listen to me. And that's a whole other thing where I feel like, parents, I mean, I don't know, how old are you guys kids?
Well,
my oldest is 10.
And my oldest is 4.
Okay. All right.
So right now.
We're getting early. No, I love it. I love it because, well, this is that part where I feel like, parents, we do love to do the thing about, when I was young, we would go out and play and ride our bikes, and I've given up on this as a therapist, and as a dad, but we just keep thinking, if I tell the story cool enough about what it was like to bike for miles and miles to go get a 25-cent soda, whatever, and then play a video game that I had to wait for and put my dumb quarters on there to say that I was next, that my kid's going to go, oh my gosh, that sounds so cool. Like you really get it, Dad. And just realizing that it is so the opposite, where, kids just feel like that parents are so detached. Yeah. You don't get me. Exactly. And I feel like, and I've, worked with people in church leadership, or I worked with parents, and they just feel like they're going to let their kid know, I don't even have social media. And they think that is going to, I don't know what they think. They think the kid's going to go, oh, this is that again, that I want to hang with that guy. When in reality, halfway through that sentence, teenager is now Snapchatting a picture of that person and putting like the little filter on it and sending it to their friends. Right. So they don't, again, it's not an inspirational story to hear that my dad doesn't get on social media or that sort of thing. Right. So I feel like I've gone on a very long tangent, but the whole story that is just, I felt like I had to start trying to get through to the teenagers and saying, I hear you. I know you want to be heard. I want you to be heard. We can try our best to get your parents on board with really trying to understand what you're going through, and try to not have your parents jump in to fix it in judging mode, which parents are really good at. And even bless their hearts, they mean well. I mean, I really do mean well when I'm telling stories about whatever it is that is not productive to my teenager. But really trying to teach the teenager then, how to, and I want your help with this. I mean, I always just say how to play the game, but then I don't want it to be a game. You know, I want it to be, I don't know, survival skills, or I don't know, is there a better strength-based phrase or word? You guys got anything?
No, the
what are we teaching the teenager how to do?
I know, sadly. It's a dance. Yeah. It's just this dance where you
dance.
figure each other out.
I like that one. A dance. Okay. So we're trying to teach them.
We're not trying to beat each other. We have to learn how to
exactly
work cohesively together to be happy.
That really is good. I mean, because in the couples therapy I do, it is a lot of those same concepts. I mean, we really do want to be heard. Oh, you just, Tony, that was good. Now you got me going into my wheelhouse now. Although I've probably bored teenagers listening to tears at this point.
No, they're engaged.
But so, you know, okay. So how are we heard? So, you know, there's a concept I love to do where, well, here, let me even step back there. So I love this concept called EFT. Kids, you're probably all you're hanging on the edge of your seat now. I'm sure the teenagers are, but it stands for emotionally focused therapy. And what it means is that even when a teenager says that they don't want to do something, that is, they are putting out there. It takes a lot for them to say that. They're being vulnerable. They're putting themselves out there. They're laying their heart out there for their parent. So when their parent just says, "I don't care, do it anyway," you know, the teenager does not feel like, "Oh man, that feels good," you know. They immediately feel like they're not heard. So teenager, you know, I know that you have been frustrated in the past where if you do say, "Hey, I don't want to take the garbage out right now," you know, you would love to even just hear a little bit of a, "Hey, tell me what's going on," you know, because maybe it's like I'm in the middle of something, or I'll do it in a little bit. And even if, and a lot of times, even if a teenager does say that, you know, unfortunately, I feel like parents are not the best at saying, "Okay, you know, thanks for sharing that with me. I can understand, you know, I that would be great if you do it later." Usually parents like, you say that all the time, you never do it, you know, right? Well, Tony, that one got you? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So, yeah. So, I feel like now what we start to create is the power battle. So even in a situation where the teenager really has all the intention in the world of finishing something, and they will do the project, but now parents already doubled down on, you always say that, "I need you to do it right now." And now it's like, now I say, we, you know, in this EFT world, we both go jump down in our bunkers, and now we're settling in. We're settling in for the long haul, right? We're gonna be throwing insults, we're gonna be withdrawing, right? Yeah, whatever we need to do. So back to this EFT world is, so if somebody's putting out their, you know, "Hey, I want to do it later," parent in that situation is, hear them, you know, tell me what you've got going on. Then parent doesn't have to just say, "Okay, roll over." But once they hear the teenager, then they can kind of share the, "All right, I appreciate that. Man, I worry that you might not get to it because in the past, you know, that seems to be hard." And then maybe teenager doesn't feel attacked, and that was a pleasant conversation, right? So anyway, that in a perfect world, that's what we're looking for. Unfortunately, if parent is not on board with this, because parent is going to convince me that will never work, because if parent can just convince themselves that will never work, then they never have to do the work of saying, "Okay, tell me more," to the teenager, right? Yeah. So what I try to teach teenagers then, and we're back to this, how to play the game, how to do the dance, is it's see, here's where I feel bad. I feel like I just set up to tell the teenager, like, just do it. But I'm really not just saying that though, you know? But I don't know. What do you guys feel like if you're trying to put something out there and somebody's not hearing you? What do you do?
Oh gosh, like as an adult, it feels a little different, because you like have a more, you feel like people are going to mutually respect you. So if you tell them that and you explain it, but then you also have maybe a track record of like, well, when I say that I'm going to do this, this is how I'm going to make sure that's done. So typically, you know, I'm in my phone going, "Hey, I've got a reminder to make sure that I do this thing," or whatever. But yeah, if like you're saying, "I don't want to do that," you typically are able to get in your words of, "This is why this isn't going to be able to be done in this way."
That's why I like what you said. Listen. Yeah, we do. We right now we anticipate that we want to be heard, and we want that kind of respect to be heard. And so I feel like what happens, and it doesn't take very long, is we do create this kind of unhealthy, unhealthy power dynamic between teenager and adult. And so, you know, I'm a big fan of trying to hit the reset switch and saying, "All right, you know, we want to kind of hear our teenager." I forget that I'm talking to the teenager though. So, you know, telling the teenager how to play the game is going to be, even if it's saying, "Okay, hey, I'll go do that." But then you kind of almost have to put the the burden on the teenager to just say, but hey, can I kind of tell you what I was up to right then? But as you're doing it, I mean, now we're starting to learn how to train the parent. And I feel like, that small little shift I've seen work miracles with teenagers where it's like, hey, I would have loved to have been able to just finish this text real quick, but I hear you. And I feel like sometimes just that small tweak is enough where then parents like, oh, no, you go ahead, but I feel like teenager wants to just say, nope, I'll do it on my own time. And again, now here we go. We're kind of locked in.
I love that.
I don't know.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So helpful.
The funny part is when it will, go ahead.
Oh no, you just glitched. Even for my 10-year-old, I am having scenarios go through like, I don't hear her. And I feel like I love relationships and I feel like we are close, but I'll do that or just do it now, listen to it. And I don't know if I just want respect, if that's why, please show me that I do a lot for you. Just do this simple thing.
Yes.
But if she does vocalize like, Mom, I'm in the middle of this. I have a thought. I'm trying to finish on this homework or whatever. I just need to step back and go, you're right. The parent needs a little more training, but since we're speaking to teens, maybe they can take the first step and say, do you mind if I tell you why I needed a minute to finish this? And
absolutely. Yeah. Or even just like, absolutely.
Okay.
So here's what I love what you just said, Tony. I love that you just talked about the word respect. So I do feel like a lot of parents, and they immediately followed up perfect, where it's not just, hey, I want some respect. Do you know how much I do for you? And I feel like, and here's where if you really have a nice productive conversation in my office with a teenager and a parent, parent wants to just start with that. Do you know how much I do for you? And it's not that necessarily teenager doesn't know that, but teenager also says, hey, do you realize like all the stuff that I kind of have going on, or all the, whether it's social pressures or whether it's academic pressures or just all of those things. And here's where things then can go back in our bunkers, where parents want to say, well, don't worry about that. You shouldn't worry about that. And here's where they get to drop back into the, I don't have social media when I was a kid, and we get into those stories. But again, kid wants to be heard, right? Because I don't know what it's like to be a teenage girl living today. And I've had my daughter on my podcast a couple times, one of my daughters talking about some anxiety, some depression. And we talk often about, I felt like my job was to go up and I would just lay on her floor and say, tell me about your day. And sure, she would say things often that I would want to say, who cares? Like, that's not a big deal. It's not, right? But I'm not going to say that, of course. And the who cares, by the way, very much caring about her, but it might be like some boy drama. And the guy's a total, goof. And it's like, I want to say that guy he shouldn't even be tying your shoes, but it's like, I would have to, tell me more, what's that like? He sounds interesting. Where if I'm on the inside, I'm just screaming, get rid of that guy. So, I mean, I feel like that's just the part where teenagers, they want to be heard, and they want that respect. They want to also feel like they're heard of what's going on in their life. And I will, if a parent is listening right now, hint the parents, what's your intent if you are trying to tell them that they shouldn't worry about things? I know it comes from a good place. You want them to not be caught up in all of the maybe drama that can be happening as a teenager. But here's the therapist tip. The only way to ever feel like you can have that conversation is if your teenager feels like you are there, you are listening. When they feel like you are a safe place and they can go to you and talk to you, that's the time where maybe they might say, I don't know, what do you think if I tell them to go buzz off? What are your thoughts? And on the inside, you're like, it's about time. But on the outside, it's like, no, that sounds like a good idea. But you're only going to get there if you create this safe environment. But back to the teen. So what do we talk about there? We talked about tweaking it a little bit. Like, sure, I'll do that, or I'll do that. I was just kind of wondering if I could finish this instead of just the no, that immediate response. Because we kind of get into what's pretty fascinating too, is we get into the whole physiology of the brain. So let's talk about the adult brain, right? So adult brain we have our own stressors, and our teenagers don't necessarily care, not meaning that in a unloving way. But so a lot of times we do come into something. If we see a teenager and they're kind of sitting there and they haven't done something, we ask them, we're already a little bit amped up, and so here, teenager, this is pretty cool. You can sound really smart with this in a neurology class or whatever, but your parent is, they're kind of already fired up a little bit. You probably know that. I know that, you can probably read your parent pretty well. And so if you see your parent, and they're a little bit amped up, they've already got this magical drug called cortisol flowing through their veins. And cortisol is a stress hormone. And what cortisol does is it raises the fight or flight part of the brain. it makes their part of the brain where they're thinking rationally, it's gone. It's taken a back seat. So when you see parent coming into you and they're like, I thought I told you to take out the garbage. Now they are not necessarily wanting to have a rational conversation. And they are in fight or flight mode. You represent a giant saber-toothed tiger that is about to attack them. So when you say, I don't want to, they're already there. They're already in this fight or flight mode. And guess what? You now are in their path. Is it fair? No, it's not. But the easiest way to dismiss that is to say, you bet, I'm on it. Now, at that point, that's when you can maybe get a parent to go, whoa, okay, thank you. That's really nice. So, I mean, I do feel like I want the teenager to hear that I would love if every parent was doing a daily mindfulness practice and they walk into a room, and even if they're stressed and they see their teenager, they take on the Zen stance and kind of say, hey, what are you up to, champ? And they tell them whatever. And they're like, oh, I was wondering if you could take out the garbage. That one's going to probably work a lot better than, right? But unfortunately, our parents are not going to do that. And teenager, you actually have a tremendous amount of power. Sorry, I just went on. I went to town there.
That's huge though. That's really what we're hoping to give teens is like, this would be great if your parents would do this and this and this and this and this. That's how your parents feel. I would be great if my kids did this and this and this and this.
Yeah.
Look, teen, like you totally can help teach them how to stop being so combative with you. Like you do have power as a teen. You have a lot of power in your relationship. And so many times it would be awesome if your parents would listen to this or listen to, I loved your 3 and 30 episode. I thought it was so impactful for me where I have only a 4-year-old. I was so grateful to find that EFT thing before. I feel like I've developed all these habits of not like listening correctly. So like it would be great if all your parents went and listened to these things, but you do have power. You have some tools and you can actually really change the tone and change the feelings that are going on by maybe complying in a different way, but then teaching them as you do that instead of just doing everything they say the moment they say it. That's not what we're encouraging. We're saying like,
right. Good.
So I'm
glad you pointed that out. So yeah.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No,
you go.
You go. I would love to hear how you would suggest a teen go about, like, let's say they're listening going, I want a different relationship with my parents. It is contentious and we can be different. Do you think it's useful for them to come to the parent and say, hey, can we talk, and just say what they've learned and what they hope to see different? Or do you think it's better just to like start off and just try like, okay, mom, I'll do that right now, but I need to finish this right after? What's a better?
Yeah, no, that's a great question.
What do you think's best?
I feel like the what we kind of covered so far is a nice place to start. That can be more of a safer place of just being able to kind of diffuse any feelings of anger by doing the thing. Okay, you bet, I'll do that, and and then hopefully I'll be able to get back to what I was doing, just so they're at least aware that you weren't just sitting there twiddling your thumbs or ignoring them. But I really like your question about how do you improve the relationship, because I do feel like at the core, parents really do want these good relationships with their teenagers. I know they do. I talk to parents all the time that do. Are they very good at it? No, they're really not. And that's okay. And I think that that's the hard part. We kind of feel like we're going to become parents of teenagers, and for some reason, we're going to slowly understand and know all the right things to do and say. And so, for a teenager that's listening to this, and I'm sure if there's a teenager that is listening to your podcast, they're smart. They're people that do want to make a change, and they're very aware of their own emotions or feelings, which I'm so grateful for. So I feel like they are in a good spot to, I have a couple of thoughts. One, you can always go up to your parent and say, hey, will you listen to this episode? I want that relationship. I really want to hear you, and I want you to be heard. That's a great thing to do. But I also have something that's completely made up, and I call it one man EFT. I haven't done a podcast on this on mine yet. So breaking news, right? I'm super excited about this. I teach it in my in my therapy a lot. But so if you want to be heard, a good way to do that often is, if you do see that your parent is stressed, it's like, hey, you go out to your parent, like, how are you doing today? Or tell me what's going on. Or, I don't know. It's kind of inviting that conversation. Or it might even be, if I don't know if there's some stress in the home or the family, if it's like, asking them, hey, how you feeling about the wedding, or whatever it is going on, and just having them talk. And then you're the one now that gets to do the tell me more. You're the one that now is saying, well, man, what's that like for you? And all of a sudden you just had your parent feel heard, if that makes sense. And so once they feel heard, now you get to double back around and say, man, I hear you. I'm pretty stressed about it as well. So even if the parent isn't asking you about it, once you just reached out to them, and I feel like sometimes this is what a teenager can do is if it's about homework, if it's about school, sometimes it is like, tell me, hey, what was it like when you were back in the 30s when you were young and going to school, or whatever. And this was what we did. And this was how dating was or whatever. And even just to pause and say, oh, I appreciate like that. Wow, that must've been different back then because now here's how things are, so you've already set the table for a more productive conversation. So now parent actually feels heard. Little they even know that they were just, tricked into now hearing your feelings, because a lot of times if teenager just says, I'm mad or here's how I'm feeling, parent doesn't say, tell me more. Unfortunately, we want them to, or if a teenager goes up and says, hey, what do you do if like one of your friends is being a jerk, and if parents like, well, here's what I would do, then it's like, okay, that makes sense. Cause man, I feel like that's hard for me. I feel like this is what I want to do. So you really are, you're the one that's kind of setting the table for a more productive conversation. That's why I call it the one-man EFT. You're basically like reaching out and saying, hey, tell me about your feelings. I'll validate them. And then I'm going to share mine, and you didn't even know I was doing it, that sort of thing.
That.
So, I mean, I feel like, does that make sense?
I think some moms are going to come crying that we just got their kids to talk to them or try to even ask them how they're doing. Some mom's going to definitely tear up. I
hope so. I mean, because I do feel like, this is where and I haven't done this one. I know I beat this one to death, but I feel like parents always do say that, teenager can talk to them about anything and they really mean it. And that's the stuff I know they mean it. And teenager listening, I guarantee you have heard that, hey, you can come tell me anything. And then if you do say that you've got a boyfriend or you failed the class or you wrecked the car or whatever, then parent reacts. I mean, and when they react, now teenager, you become the holder of all data and truths. It's like, okay, I'm not doing that again. And then parents like, hey, why aren't you talking to me? And so I feel like that one, I want to preach that one as much as I can for both the teenager and the parent. I want the parent to know that, if we got to create an environment so that the teenager will want to talk. And I feel like that one, parents really do want to know what to do. I mean, they really do want to connect with teenagers. They just maybe aren't really good at it right now. And I think, Tony, when you're talking about the respect, that one gets hard too. Yeah.
And I genuinely, I know all of the parents love their kids and they want to have that kind of relationship. But the thing is, if the kids could see through the parents' mind, like we kind of see this bigger picture. And I remember being in that space and feeling like, oh, my mom doesn't get it. Like I feel insignificant because she's saying that doesn't matter. That, whatever, that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But for me, I want the teens to know that their parents do love them. And sometimes it's just that we have different even personality types. And how I handle things, I have this box that makes sense to me, but my kid can have a totally different perspective on life. And I'm trying to parent them in the box. And I think that's the hardest part is being able to like realize my parent is doing the best they can with what they know from their life experience and just having an open mind both ways. I think the parent needs to have this open mind that they are going to handle life differently and it's okay. And the kid needs to see my parent is actually doing the best they can, but maybe we can all work together and be more open with our communication to make this a more seamless process and have a good
I love it.
relationship.
So I also have, I've never I've got two other things I've never talked about before. So let's see if they work. And if not, I'll pretend I didn't say them and I won't say them on my podcast. Right. And I will edit this out when you guys, when I put this one on mine as well as a bonus episode. So one of them is this concept of with couples, sometimes I just want them to be heard. So I'll say, just do one layer of EFT and then you're done. So it might be in a situation. It's, hey, tell me what you're thinking in this situation that we have right now. What are your thoughts? And, the one spouse will say, well, I feel like you jumped to conclusions. I feel like you really didn't hear me, and then I say to the other one, all right, what are you hearing? Well, I felt like I didn't have a chance to talk because I felt like I wasn't able to really get my complete thought out, and we're done. Like, that's it. I say one layer and end scene, we're out. Because what typically happens is we try to have these conversations. Then maybe we do say, all right, I want to hear what my teenager has to say. And then she may say, look, I feel like you pay more attention to my sister than you do to me. And then parent immediately goes, that's ridiculous. Do you know how much time I spent? It's like, all right, fine. I won't say a word, So really sometimes it's like, okay, I need to hear that. And then even to have the parent say, I can understand that, and then I feel like I'm trying, but maybe I could be more aware. And we are done, and let's kind of talk about it again tomorrow. Because you're trying to reverse this negative pattern of every conversation is going to be a battle. Both people are trying to then figure out the best way to win. I'm either, and talk about the dance. We talked about the dance earlier in couples therapy and EFT. They talk about these things called demon dialogues. And so teenager, here's the way that these play out, is that sometimes when we don't feel like we have control, we'll withdraw because we're like, fine, I don't care, because and our parent will pursue, and then that, doesn't go very well. Or other times we'll lash out with anger because that's the only way we feel like we can have control. So we get in all these like different dances that aren't very helpful, aren't very healthy. So that's one of the goals, is just how do we get out of those negative patterns? And one of those ways is to just try to say, all right, let's just try to be heard. I think that's one. The other thing that I was thinking about when you talked about that your parents do, they really are, they can't help it. They kind of are, they want to tell you, look, I've done all these things. I've been all these places. I know what you're going through. Trust me. And I'll just kind of let parents know, no surprise. Did that work when you were a teenager? No, teenager still wants to kind of have their own experience. So it's nice to be able to say, I worry that, or here's my concerns. But, back in the day, I was teaching a seminary class. We were talking about the concept of time. And I don't know, I've never thought about this one to put in this aspect, so you can tell me if this works or not. But we were talking about if like a blind person comes into a room and they've got a tissue box, and they're going to start feeling, they don't know what it is. They're feeling the corners, the edges, they feel maybe the perforation around the top. And so then, they maybe then come up with, all right, I've linearly kind of thought through this, and it's a tissue box. But they were talking about how, or if somebody comes in the room with sight and they just look and it's like tissue box. That's it. So sometimes I feel like a parent is almost kind of, they kind of already see the tissue box, and the teenager is kind of trying to figure it out linearly, trying to, all right, what happens next? What happens when I do this? And so, I almost feel like empowering parents and teenagers to have a conversation of, hey, I need to kind of figure this out, but go ahead, give me your tissue box view. What do you kind of see there? Yeah, right. But for the teenager, it's like, I hear you, I want to be heard, but maybe this is one of those where I really do want to kind of try to linearly see what comes next. But go ahead, mom or dad, tell me what you kind of think is here's what I've seen, here's what's going to happen. That's fine. I'll listen. Because, we would at least like to have those conversations happen and not have people just angry and, and down in their bunkers. Did that answer? Was that answer that question about parents or teenagers wanting a better relationship? I don't know if we got that one.
Yeah,
did we?
I totally think it does. I think the parent, like, we've never done this before, is something the kid needs to keep in mind. I've never done this before.
Yeah.
I tell them that, like, I'm going to mess up and I'm sorry, but I think it's just a really important. Oh, I lost my train of thought.
I'll find it. It's very important. People have to go watch this on YouTube, because that was a very funny look that you guys gave each other. You can tell that you're like on this, that one right there. Yeah.
I can look at Erica and I'm like, save me, say something.
I was waiting for where she was going.
It was.
Can I tell you can I tell you what I'm doing? I just thought about this yesterday. I told this to a client. So when I'm doing therapy, and let's say I lose my train of thought, in the past, when I was not maybe as comfortable as a therapist, I would realize I don't know what I'm about to say next. And I would go, you know what, actually, let me take this a different direction. I would act like it was real organic and that I meant to do that. Right. Yeah. So you could have done that. You could have done that one time.
Thank you. I'll do that next time.
Okay. Now I just say, oh, I totally lost my train of thought, and let's try to figure this one out. So, but
I love it.
It seemed very intentional.
Oh, yeah.
I will say that the one of the things, what's that?
I said, sorry about that, everybody.
Oh, no. You are fine. I was going to say, though, I kind of feel like I did a couple of little cheesy notes here that I do feel like there's a lot of fear about that. Teenagers do have this fear. Okay, so here's a thing that I've seen in my own home, and I process a lot. And it's funny when I hear a teenager say, like the parent will say, hey, just what are you up to tonight? What's the plan? And that can almost be a trigger in itself, because teenagers like, I don't know what I'm doing. And then parent will say, okay, well then just keep me posted. Like, let me know where you're going or what you're up to. And I feel like that is one of those, and this is where I am going to sound like a bit of just a dad, but I promise you I've got my therapist hat on as well. That is one of the easiest ones where I know teenager wants to, they kind of want to have that control of, I can kind of do whatever I want, because if I tell them where I'm going or what I'm going to do, they might say no. But so that's one of those where I feel like is a very quick and easy way to, and let your parent hear this part. Parent, if your teenager is going to tell you, hey, they were going to not tell you, so just tell them, thank you for letting me know where you're going and what time you're going to be home. Try that one on for size for a little bit, unless they say they're going somewhere incredibly dangerous and they're, I don't know, fighting with tigers or they're playing with razor blades or whatever. Then you can say, I don't know if that's a good idea, right? I worry. Tell me more about these tigers and razor blades. I'm wondering if that might be dangerous. Yeah, exactly, right? But I mean, I do feel like that's one that I run into a lot. And it's so funny when I'll have teenagers in here saying, man, my mom's a pain. She always wants to know where I'm going. Can you believe it? I'm like, well, I mean, you can just shoot them a text. I mean, right? But I of course, ask them questions first if they're in my office. But I feel like that's one of those where I get teenagers in and I'll hear from the parent. And this is the super funny part, if I'm being honest. A lot of times parents they'll give me credit for things that I had no part of. It's just the kid finally figuring it out. So like they'll say, no, he's been really good. He's kind of more communicative, and I had a teenage boy in here not long ago. And I just said, it's all right. So your mom's like saying you're being totally cool. What changed? And he was like, I don't know. It's just a lot easier to just like go with it. Then she kind of backs off. I was like, thank you. I've been telling you that for 2 years, but I mean, so sometimes it is the, just tell them just like, hey, run in here, be home at this time. And I feel like that is a fear maybe of teenager that parent is going to say no. I can tell you parent, I don't know, they want to know they're doing something, so even they just want to know, oh, okay, all right, thanks for checking in. Even if in their mind, they're I don't know, they're really not, their goal isn't to say, okay, I'm waiting to be able to tell them to say no. I really want to say no to something tonight. That's my goal. That is to the teenager, that is not the goal, right? That is not the goal. Parents are not just trying to find things to disagree with their kid. That's where I really feel like, I mean, parents want that relationship with their kid. They really do. And I mean, I think they want nothing more than that. But again, like we just don't always know how to have it work and that whole respect and do how much you do.
Should they prep that saying with them, like, hey, like, I'm going to tell you what I'm up to, but I'd like you to be like, maybe open-minded.
Oh, I like that.
Like, I don't know if that's more.
I like that.
Maybe.
Oh, that's good. No, it's good. I'll tell you why that's good. Oh, that's good. There's a principle that I work with often where it's that one where it's like, because I call it monologuing. I totally stole it from The Incredibles, but I worked it into EFT where, The Incredible, and then he starts monologuing. I love that, right? So I will have couples often monologue. So the guy might say, he's like, okay, I'm about to be vulnerable. I'm about to put out an emotional bid. I'm about to share something that's really difficult for me. And it's almost like the wife's sitting there like, oh, I've been waiting for this for so long, right? And then he's like, I would like Mexican food for dinner, right? And it's a little bit of a letdown, but she knows it was a big deal because he's like built up to it. And there's even some things where somebody, there's a lot of cool research around people saying, hey, I don't know, I'm a little bit nervous to tell you about this. And we immediately go to like worst case scenario. So then when somebody just says, I'm really struggling to play the banjo, then you're kind of like, oh, okay, no, we'll do whatever you want to do to play the banjo, we'll do that. So I think you're onto something big. So I feel like if they do say, okay, I really do want to try harder. I'm going to let you know where I'm going, but it's hard for me because I'm worried that you're going to tell me no. But I really want this to work. I feel like parents can be like, whatever, tigers, razor blades, whatever, just let me know, and it's okay with me as long as you let me know. Right.
Oh yeah.
See that callback? That was a callback.
I like it.
And I think there'd be a big change in the relationship if those simple steps. I really do. I can visualize like confrontations with my daughter. If she came to me in that calm manner, I think it would change the whole scenario.
Yeah. No, it really would. I like what we're doing here. Are you guys gonna be able to distill this down into tangible points though? I feel like I kind of went off the rails a little bit.
I'm loving it. I do kind of want to maybe like break it down and kind of summarize like
right
why this even matters. I'm sure there are some teens that are like, I don't even need to be friends with my kids.
We're not even alike at all. Why do I want to be friends? Why does that matter?
I got this one. So I do. Okay. So I actually wrote notes on this one. I do. Okay. I'd never look at my notes. Now that I'm looking at my notes, I can't find what I wrote in my notes. Teenage years, but did we already talk about tigers and razor blades? Did we already talk about that? Let's see.
Check it off the list.
Really not in my notes. But I do feel like this is a little, okay, here it is. Learn and navigate the teenage. Okay. Because now I just remember what I was going to say. Now we're about to go deep. Teenager, this is where you're going to sound incredibly smart. Jot some notes down. We're going to talk about attachment theory. You're going to be able to dazzle your parents. So when you were born, teenager, and they probably already know how that all works, right? I mean, is that your audience trends a little bit older? So when you were born, you were a pink squishy baby and you were not able to defend yourself. And so you could not go out into the wild and hunt for your own food. You required the nurturing of your mom, and your dad tried to be there and change diapers and try not to get peed on. I mean, that's kind of what dads do. So, and that is why you have a need for an attachment. We all come from the factory with this desire to attach to someone that is our secure attachment. So then as we get older, now we focus our attachments on other places like our friends. Our friends, sometimes we have good relationships or good experiences with attachment with our friends, and sometimes we don't. Sometimes they make fun of us. Sometimes, they think that they're being witty or funny, and it can hurt a little bit. So we start to kind of build up a little bit of walls around who we really open up to. And then we date, and that one's kind of scary because we worry we got to put on our best selves. And if the person finds out that we really are afraid of the dark or I don't know, that sort of thing, then we worry that in our minds that they will leave. So we just protect ourselves. We protect a lot of our real emotions. And but we have this desire for this attachment, this secure attachment. So the reason I kind of lay all that groundwork is that our parents are still kind of the safest, securest attachment that we can have. So the reason why it is good to try to nurture this relationship is because here's the really cool part from a psychological standpoint. If you have this secure attachment with someone, then you go out and explore the world because you know that you've got somebody you can go back and try to process things with. You know that you can go out and you can get your feelings hurt, or you can ask, why are these things unfair in the world? And you can come back and say, I want to process this. So right now, teenager, that is the best bet we have, is to develop that attachment with our parent, because that's kind of where we came from the factory. So that's why I think it's so important to try to nurture this. Now, when we get older, we want to have that secure attachment with our spouse. And then that's the whole other story, right? That's the work of the marriage therapist, or that's, learn those EFT skills, because that's part of that whole dance that people do in couples relationships, is we're vying for that secure attachment. Do you care about me? Can I count on you? Do you love me? Do you have my back? So we have those same principles in place as teenagers, but with one little tweak, one little caveat, that it is the teenager's job. So maybe here's the part, teenager, where you have your parent listen to this one again. But it is the teenager's job, though, to break away from the parent. But the best way to do that is if they're breaking away from a secure attachment. If they know that they can, again, go out, explore the world a little bit, and they know that their parents right there has their back, they can count on them, love them, that sort of thing. So that's why it's important. Plus, you might need somebody to co-sign for like a car loan, or like, those sort of things, monetary, right? So there's practical reasons.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's so important to have that secure attachment. They're your advocate. They love you. Mm-hmm. That is the point why we're raising children, so they can be independent and to be able to go out and live in the world on their own. But maybe what the teen can do is keep them feeling in the loop, keep them feeling engaged in life. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be a big time, but keep those communication lines open so they keep feeling connected.
Well, and absolutely. And I really like, this whole concept too of, I don't know, Erica, you get credit for this one, right? Where you were, it really was that kind of prepping them for it or priming them for it. I really like that takeaway of, of letting them know, I want that relationship and I really want to open up to you, but I worry that, you're going to just kind of tell me my ideas are wrong, or that I shouldn't think the way I think, or so, I'm going to kind of trust you with, I just want you to hear me, or that sort of thing. So I really like that kind of priming the pump, so to speak, which that's one of those phrases that probably people don't really know what it means, because I'm an old man. Priming the pump. I didn't have a pump to prime though. I mean, that's like really old, but I like the phrase.
I don't know what it means, but I'll trust you guys.
I love it. Okay. I love it.
So, then what are the very most important things that teens can remember about the adult mindset? Like if they have one thing to really remember, what could they take away?
So I toyed with what the number one thing would be, because I think there's two number one things. I feel like that was not a very intelligent statement, right? but I feel like there's the one that we talked about where, if we really do want to kind of invoke change and we want to be proactive with it, then as a teenager, then there is that, okay, I'm going to do what they're asking me, but I really am still going to let them know that I'm still going to have a voice. I'm going to try to not amp myself up, because, I know that pattern doesn't work. So that's one where you are kind of in charge of your own destiny a little bit. Is it fair? No, not necessarily, but is it productive? Is it the right thing to do? Because that's the way that you're going to have your parent typically maybe step back and go, man, okay, I'm taking this out on you a little bit, or I'm maybe projecting on you some frustrations that I'm having. So it might be that, you bet, I will take the garbage out, but and then I want to get back to helping my friend with their homework or whatever. So I think that's a good way to just immediately reduce that conflict. But I think the second part too is just that one man EFT stuff that we were talking about, where it's if I really do, and it takes a little bit of work, but if I really do want to be heard, that unless your parent is willing to listen to this podcast and maybe do a little bit more of their own kind of understanding of why it's important for you, teenager, to feel heard, then sometimes it might be you going and asking your parents a question of, hey, tell me more about, whatever the thing is. And then after they kind of tell you more about it, then don't be afraid to then share your thought. Here's how, okay, here's what I'm thinking, or here's how I feel. And I feel like, you start to model that behavior, and it's not just a good one to do at home. That's a good one to do with your friends. That's a good one to do at work, because people want to feel heard. And then you do, at that point you understand more about that person, and then you're going to share your thoughts or your truths as well. So I don't know. Do you guys have a preference, one or two? No, and then there's the whole thing about
we got to keep them both.
Bring that both in.
All right.
I want to know, so let's say a teen has really broken the trust of a parent. Big time, lying, and they want a fresh start. What's the best way for them to say, like, really, I'm going to change? Or, it's hard for, as parents, we look at the history, and I think when parents are dealing with teens, we're often using our rational minds instead of the emotional. Yep. And teens often work off the emotional rather than rational. So there's that disconnect there. And how can we get the parents on the same page if they're like, had broken the trust and want to rebuild that again?
Yeah. So, and this one takes, I like it. It takes a reset. It really does. It takes being intentional with the parent and saying, this is, as a teenager, I really do want, I really want a better relationship, but I'm worried that there are going to be some things that are going to be held against me or brought up again, or, so that's one of those where in a perfect world, I get to do that stuff in therapy often, where I'll have a teenager who is sent to me to fix one of those kind of situations. And they're aware that they're struggling to kind of tell the truth about certain things, but it's because of the reaction that their parent has given them. So that's a time where I'll bring the parent in and I'll say, all right, we got to be heard, because we kind of need a reset or a fresh start. If you don't have the ability to kind of go to therapy with your parent, I do find that a lot of times for teenagers, especially, it is easier to communicate. I know parents want to do the whole, just come talk to me, but parents they can be scary, and they can be, again, amped up with this fight or flight stuff, or they can be reactionary. So I often have teenagers text or write a letter or that sort of thing, so that because that way they can get all their thoughts out, and their parent then has a chance to read and process and not react, because I feel like that's where things just get off to a rough start when we immediately start into the fixing or judgment, especially as parents. I did a training a long time ago. Oh, what's that?
And then emotions are heightened, and it doesn't.
And then you're done, right? Then you're back to fight or flight stuff.
Writing a letter.
But it's good. I did a training a long time ago, actually, when I was working at this nonprofit. So this was a long time ago, and the training was it was like a little notebook, and the parent would write some things in a notebook that they liked about the person, or kind of their thoughts, or whatever it was. And they would just slide it under their teenager's pillow at night, and then they wouldn't talk about it. And then their teenager would write and then put it under the parent's pillow. And it wasn't, and it was just a way that it was kind of the safe way to just share some things between the two of them. And sometimes that was a nice way to just, hey, here's some of the things I'm worried about, or here's some of the things I'm nervous about talking to you about. And so, what I love about being a therapist is there's really no end to the ways that you can connect with somebody. If you want to do like some journal, if you want to do text, if you want to do it in song, if you want to, share a Google document, if you want to, whatever it is. But the point is just kind of be a little more intentional. And if that doesn't necessarily work as the way you hoped it would, then what's next? Use that data and kind of try something else. So, I like that. I feel like the parent has to hear that, though, that it takes a lot for a teenager to say, hey, I really do want to improve this relationship. I want the parents to say, hey, I want to improve this relationship. So, and I understand I can be scary, and I understand that I can be reactionary, and I understand that I might not be the best listener, but I really want that to change. I would love for that to be from the parents' angle. But if it's the teenager, then it's kind of those same principles.
But it just takes one person to change a relationship. And if one of them is going to just put their neck out of the line first, I think big changes will happen.
And tell me if this makes sense. But, I mean, because that goes back to, excuse me, how we started with the people want to, people want to be heard. And so, and I know this is where I get all geeked out about something that my wife will tell me, that doesn't really make a lot of sense when you say it. It only makes sense in your own head. And she doesn't really say that, but I know that there are things that make so much sense to me, and I get so passionate about them. But this one about being heard, one of the best ways for change to occur, though, even if you feel like you want to communicate to your teenager, this is to the parent, that you do feel like they're doing something that is maybe not the best thing to do, you're not going to get that point across going in and telling them, hey, I think what you're doing is dumb. The best way is going to be, tell me more about what you're doing. Tell me what that's like for you. Give me examples where that's worked for you. Give me examples when that's been difficult. Talk to me. I want to hear you, and I'm not going to try to fix it. I'm not going to try to judge it. And when a teenager feels heard and that safe, secure connection begins to form, that's when a teenager then might say, I don't know, what do you think? Or they might even say, you know what? I do want help with this. But it's not going to come when they're feeling attacked, or that the conversation is definitely not going to go anywhere. So there, I'll end. There's my passionate speech.
You nailed it. Agreed. I think it's so important. I loved learning about that from you, and I just have it's going to take some practice. And teen, you're going to have to give up a little bit of comfort and sacrifice a little bit to build a relationship. If it feels strained, you're going to have to step up a little bit, because you can totally take charge and help it, but you're going to have to sacrifice a little bit.
Yeah, no, and I like that too. I like you're saying take charge, because I want this to work in the home with the parent, but heaven forbid if it doesn't necessarily work that way, or parent has their own struggles or challenges, but it's a much more productive concept to then move forward in life with, of being able to, I'm going to kind of be a little more intentional. I'm going to be a little more empathetic. I'm going to do the thing that maybe I need to do at work or at school, and I'm still going to be able to express myself, but instead of just, I'm going to hunker down in my bunker and I'm going to, and I'm just going to see if I can wait this out. I mean, so, because at the end of the day, there's a cheesy phrase, but at the end of the day, you're not doing anything good for you in that moment. Yes, you might show them that they were big jerks, but, I would rather you be doing cool stuff. And then that's the way they find out that they were being big jerks, not from them, from you having to withdraw or whatever. And not that all parents are big jerks.
We try not to be.
Awesome. Well, Tony, is there anything
right.
we missed or didn't cover that you wanted to share? If we skipped over anything, is there anything that we?
I don't think so. I think we covered a lot. I feel like we've been talking for 20 minutes. It's been 50, right?
I know, we've been.
I've loved it.
Yeah.
I did want to
cool.
well, I don't know why I was saying I did want to. I'm just so grateful for you coming and sharing with teens and with our listeners. I think that one thing I love so much about the things that you share on your podcast are just really not only are you really entertaining to listen to, but I think that you have a really brilliant mind, and it's been so fun. You have a passion for understanding the why behind things that are difficult for people. It's so interesting to me. So I've loved listening to your podcast. This has been a dream of ours, and it's so fun to connect with you and feel like it's just so it's
very nice, so kind. Imposter syndrome. Very nice.
But I just want to mention to everyone, you have a really cool program called The Path Back. You're gonna definitely. We want to have you back on the show so that we can have you speak to our listeners about pornography, about your program. We would love to be able to share that with them. But I've been interested in kind of learning about that. I think it's incredibly helpful to have tools in combating that in this world. And I think there are so many teens in need of that information. So I did want to share that today as well.
No, thank you. And I would love, honestly, I'm glad you brought that up too, because that's a whole thing too, that I feel like, there's a lot of the old school is kind of more shame based in that world, and I hate it. I hate that the pornography is as prevalent it is and all that stuff. But there's the data we're working with, and so the only way to start moving away from it is to have people feel like there's hope and that there's strength and that they can open up or talk about it and not feel like they're gonna be told, how bad they are. And so, no, I would love to talk about that too, because I feel like there's a pretty big shift. I mean, I've been doing this work for about 15 years now. And, 15 years ago, it really was a whole different world of kind of feeling like people did have to make themselves feel crummy. And that sure didn't work, but I feel like over the last decade or so, there's a lot of strength-based models that work well to help. So yeah, anybody listening to this, I mean, we can get that under control too. We really can. The pornography addiction, any of that kind of stuff. Definitely.
So where can they find that? Where can our listeners find
Oh yeah. So, you can just go to TonyOverbay.com. And then there's links there, or it's pathbackrecovery.com. But there's links to the Virtual Couch podcast on there, or I'm trying to, I'm an old man trying to figure out the whole social media thing. You can follow me on Instagram at Virtual Couch or on Facebook, some stuff like that too. So all over the place, but I'm still not very good at all of those.
That's great.
Okay. Sounds good. Good.
You've been wonderful, and I've learned a lot, and I already want to go implement a lot of these things in how I parent. So thank you for serving me.
Me too. Yeah. No, thanks you guys. I wish I was gonna say I'll open up the door and we can have a little group session with my noon, 12 o'clock, right? We can carry this right on through.
Get out of here. And
No, we're good.
I kept wishing you were in Utah because I want you to be like my family, but you're not. I mean, we're in Idaho, so we're just a drive away, but you're actually in Washington. Is that correct?
No, I'm in Sacramento, Rockland area. Right, it's Rockland, California. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Where are you guys at in Idaho? We're at in Idaho.
Boise. We're in Eagle.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, you're over there. All right.
Yeah.
I got kids at BYU Idaho.
Oh,
all right. Hey, so send me the like a link to the video, and I'll put it up, and I'll put it up on my YouTube channel and all that stuff, and let me know what else you need from me. And I can't wait to promote this and all that stuff. This is
awesome. Fun. We can edit and send you the wave for the audio. Do you want
that'd be great too. Yeah, that'd be great. Please do. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you,
all right.
Tony. Such a
Thanks,
pleasure.
guys. You too. We'll talk to you again soon. Okay.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.